Alright, greetings everyone. It is I, Umber here to do a review of Kefka and a discussion about Kefka. I originally recorded this on stream, but there were issues with music. So I'm re-recording this. This does mean that the testing will not be in this video, but I will make a separate video talking about and showing off Kefka and his performance a little bit later. Something else to note, excuse me, is that I will also be doing a couple of videos recapping a bunch of units that have been released since JP's 3rd anniversary, talking about which ones I consider to be the highest, which ones I consider the best investment, and so on and so forth. Same with VCs, look for that in the future. Current date of when that will happen, not too terribly sure. There's going to be some Fire Emblem videos, some Metroid Prime videos going up, and maybe something else in the near future. So there's lots of video content coming very shortly for you guys. All right, but here we are. Let's talk about Kefka. And Kefka, I have to say, from my initial impression today and testing him out, I have to say he's quite an interesting character. Maybe, though, a little bit too chaotic for his own good, and even for his owner's own good. But we'll get into all of that shortly. Honestly, my feelings right now as a JP Wotv player are basically a easy pass. For one thing, I'm not as nostalgic for FF6 as other people are. Secondly, this character thus far doesn't seem like another Sephiroth. He doesn't seem like an insanely overpowered character that's pushing the game in new directions. This is a lot of old stuff combined into a new character, and pretty good. That being said, he is a 100 cost limited time character, and really next week on JP, it's either going to be Rafu or the last Void character, and both of those are a much stronger. I would rather wait for those. So that's just me personally, but let's evaluate the character. Now, this character, honestly, is, as I said a little bit earlier, just a bit of a mixed bag. I do need to pop in a image here. I'm just trying to get that ready. But taking a look at him stat-wise, you can probably get an early impression for what he is like. And to be honest, that impression is both accurate and not accurate. So here is a screen cap I got from him earlier. This was in a 3 fire party with UR Mont and UR Fire Glassy Regalia version, and against 3 dark characters, Sephiroth, Little Leela, as well as Majin Bina. Now, quickly to note, he does have his brand new weapon. His brand new weapon does come with a specific bonus only for him. It has 158 magic on it. It increases magic attack by 15 for him, human killer on magic attacks for him, and last but not least, AoE resistance of 8. It also has spirit penetration 20. Now, as for his new VC, he does come equipped with Bahamut, which is a strong magic summon. The new VC, Omen, has 152 magic, 4 spirit, 333 HP, gives a 10% magic boost and 10% missile resistance, while also giving him magic attack of 42, defense of 12, and HP of 25%. So a lot of this is basically informing us as to how his own stats will be. He also has the magic fire-based card on his sub, he has the winter coat, and he has his own TMR. Now, really quickly, just to jump back over here, here is his TMR and its stats. You can take a brief look, pause if you need to. I think that this TMR is very well statted, and its ability giving magic and speed upgrade for the user as well as other characters is a prime mage TMR that I think is quite good in this day and age, also because it is an accessory, so it does provide more flexibility than an armor, and it's, again, pretty well statted overall. So sure, Kefka comes with a great TMR. That's fantastic. The new VC is good for him as well. One thing I would like to state very quickly, that the new vision card is quite in line with exactly the team that I think that this guy would be good with. Basically, Roy Mustang, him, in combination with Armont or Yuffie in a tanking position, could be potentially really interesting, but we'll come back to talking about Yuffie in that position. This VC also supports that because it works with Yuffie, it works with Armont, and it works with both Roy Mustang as well as Kefka. Now, Kefka is basically the perfect kind of troll character. From my initial testing against Dark, one thing that became very, very obvious very, very quickly is that he is a prime troll character. Now, the trolly side of him is basically in his status effects, his changing of hatred on other units, and last but not least, his magic casting and how defensive he can be. The thing that I picked up early on in my testing was that he really couldn't kill other opponents, but neither could he get killed super easy. Sephiroth definitely came the closest, being able to absolutely thrash him with an inch of his life. And remember, Sephiroth is quite good at removing rear A's, which is one thing that Kefka depends on to keep alive. Also, without his own VC, his HP would be quite a bit lower, and he would be definitely more brittle and less durable, and I think that is important. As for his resistances, nothing too terribly high, nothing really that special it looked, but again, in my initial testing, this did keep him alive quite well in a Little Leela Sephiroth and Majin Fina matchup, and I think that is definitely noteworthy. So, with that being said, we've talked about his weapon, we've talked about his TMR, and we talked about his VC. Now, let's talk about the unit itself. Now, this guy is a 3-move, 1-jump. One thing you'll notice is that he does, on the statted one I showed you, basically have 4-move and 2-jump, and one of that is because of his support skill. His master ability does give him magic attack resistance, penetration, and AoE resistance, as well as defense and more AoE resistance. Hence why it actually can be quite difficult to kill him, because he is a fairly defensive unit, all things considered. And it works, unlike some other times, but it does require him to essentially have the HP buffs to keep him alive, which TMR runes could only enhance. Now, taking a look at this is the one that you're always going to be running for support because it supports his main job. Skill activation time is a problem for him in his main kit, but not in his subs. As for magic attack and spirit penetration, both of those things are quite useful for an offensive type character, so we're going to leave that at that. If you're running Arithmetician, there's always a argument to be made to actually use one of these skills in upgrading, but really that will be based on your own decision making. As for his other main job, it also gives him a move and jump increase, which I think is actually a little bit of a dual-edged sword. Again, you don't necessarily want this character moving in too fast. He could end up being targeted and just get murdered if he moves too far ahead of a tank, which is very possible because not all tanks are super fast. I'll give you that Armont does have a speed buff, but something to be wary of. Now, with Energist, he does have the chance to bump up his magic attack, either with the 5-turn one. Basically, if you don't know, Garvel and Energist alike have an ability or a support skill that for the first 5 turns, they get an agility boost, a magic boost, and a dexterity boost, making them extra deadly, but after 5 turns, they fall a little flat, which is very, very dangerous for them. The longer the battle, the longer that this is going to work. And this is basically sets Kefka up in his kit for 2 different ways. One is an offensive damage dealer, and the other is a status effect disruptionist. Both of these are completely possible for this character, and given what we're about to see, I think you'll agree. As for his counter, basically 3 choices. His main one inflicts poison, which is uninteresting and unsynergistic with his kit, so basically flavor-wise, great, otherwise, pass. As for Arithmetician, with the counter damage while absorbing HP, kind of interesting, but again, I'm not super convinced that this will be anything too amazing, so we'll put this as a maybe. Last and probably best is Energist, just a chance to evade a physical attack, which is quite important, since he is still a little bit more on the brittle side per se in certain cases. Having an extra layer of protection is good. However, there is quite a bit of reaction block going around that will probably just make this ability mute anyway, most of the time. Now, looking at his Energist job, basically, if you want to be running a DPS, you want to be running this, because Energist has Magic Barrier Breaker, it has Move to a Unit Panel, it has more offensive capability skills with more range on it. So that's basically where you will be running Energist. As for Arithmetician, basically if you want insta-cast spells. Again, one of the problems with the friend unit that we saw earlier, this one that I showed, is that he's set up to his primary job only and did not have the Energist subs equipped to him, which made it a little bit difficult to tell exactly how effective he'll be as a damage dealer. So do consider that. As for Arithmetician, if you want instacast, I don't think he'll ever heal ever based on his AI, but if he was manual, not the worst source of an additional heal if needed. Now, as to his main job, most of the stuff we kind of knew already. Spirit decrease off of his main attack, auto revive with 2 uses that also gives a slight CT boost, similar to Queen Mashari. Here we have a large AoE that also debuffs. Important thing here is it debuffs magic resistance, so better for a magical type team. Excuse me, feel a little sick. Decreases attack, magic, and agility, and all of these are quite important for, again, keeping him alive as well as his teammates alive. Big AoE, quite useful in a lot of cases. Now, as for his other ones, we're going to come back to this one in a second. And sorry, that was up, so I'll just go back up, show those abilities for a second, although you can check them out on Wotv Calc for yourself. Now, here, with this one, reduce chance of counter and dispel auto revive, obviously quite good, much stronger because of its non-elementalness, meaning that a lot of different characters can use this ability and use this ability, or you can use this against multiple types of elementals, even into his worst matchups, and have at least some kind of advantage for a strong damage attack. As for his last ability, this synergizes with the sub main job in his kit, which is basically if Poison, Blind, Silence, Confusion, or Haste are active, then this ability gets an extra 60% modifier, which is quite strong. Over 200% mod is a very powerful ability. It also dispels haste, which is quite nice, but most of these, Poison, Blind, Silence, and Confusion, probably aren't going to proc most of the time, in the sense that Poison comes off of his counter, which can be blocked by Reaction Block quite easily. As for Silence, Confusion, and Haste, or Silence, Confusion, and Blind, those are on the sub part of his job and his excuse me, it's Limit Burst. Problem with Limit Bursts is that they are a single use. You don't get to use them multiple times for something like Porcelain Tower without a reset. So Confusion has limited access, and so does Poison. Now, if you want him to be more of a DPS or Instacaster, well, then you're going to have to give up these status effects, and his job level 25 ability does lose quite a bit of potency. 60% is quite a lot. Now, I admit that you are getting potentially more DPS out of that, but it does make his kit kind of unflexible in a certain way, and does make you choose down 2 paths. DPS, or maybe a little bit more of a disruptionist. Now, with all of that being said, we've taken a look at his entire kit. His Limit Burst, as we've said, is a giant AoE previously in another video, but we'll cover it again. 67% chance to inflict confusion. From my initial testing, this basically looks like it'll go off almost 100% of the time. With testing it against Sephiroth, it was even like a 98% chance of happening. Here's the thing though, confusion, not as strong as maybe a certain character. So, now that that has all been basically said, let me talk about what I think the strengths are. Access to status effects, as well as just auto re-raise and dispelling others, auto re-raise, removing haste, punishing haste, and just a variety of status effects makes him quite the trolly character that can be hard for necessarily auto to predict. And in that case, in a lot of PvP sections, I am agreeing with a lot of people early on saying that this character will probably be quite annoying and quite good in PvP, with an asterisk. As for DPS, from my initial testing, without him being focused more with the Energist ability, I think that he will be quite good at potentially dealing enough damage to kill some of the strongest characters out there. Not necessarily all the characters, because again, going up against Sephiroth, he won't have access to a lot of his his status effects, because you're going to be needing to run any kind of barrier breaker or running another unit with some kind of barrier breaker. So that is still a problem. And I guess that's more of a concern. But his DPS does seem pretty strong, and he seems at the very least tanky enough with the combination of everything he's gotten to be quite at least a little bit more difficult to kill for certain units. Now, let's talk about concerns about this unit. Major concerns I have with this character are basically as follows. First, he is going to have a really absolute killer unit for this guy to go up against in Celeste. Regardless of what team Celeste is on, she is his worst matchup and probably the thing he is the most scared of in the entire world. Not only does she have elemental advantage, but she just counters it out, and with all the buffs she's gotten, she is looking to be the strongest character out of all the Final Fantasy VI characters thus far. Now, with that also being said, I guess we do need to consider just one, no. This unit, I can see him potentially having problems in this ability that we didn't talk about earlier. His spirit and AoE resistance is a good buff, but I want to draw attention to his increased chance of being targeted on other units, because Auto does not really discern from one friend from the other. And the question here is, once he's cast it once on someone like you, Armand, would he then use his auto re-raise, or would he potentially cast this ability again on the third unit in this team, such as Roy Mustang, therefore effectively potentially getting one of your characters killed? I don't know if the AI is smart enough to use this properly, and this ability, short of its defensive capabilities, is useless in manual. Not only that, but Kefka actually doesn't really benefit from any of his status effects in most PvE content, as most PvE content is designed to ignore status effects, which is quite rough to say the least. In my overall thoughts on this character, I think PvE wise, he's kind of a little bit just okay. If you want to particularly run an arithmetician for the quick casting, well, Dark Witch Helena is unlimited and basically everybody has her. So yeah, don't think that this unit will necessarily be replacing a unit like that for any reason, even nostalgia, because it's quite an expensive bit of nostalgia to go for. As for the potential of his AI just running amok, Confusion is not really particularly as strong as a status effect as Charm is. Charm with Sidali is probably the overall stronger one. The best thing that you can hope for here is that your AoE catches a bunch of units and you just confuse everyone. But in certain teams, those units are not necessarily going to be grouped up. For instance, Lightning with Skahal might just kind of stay back and heal up most of the stuff that happens from the confusion, and then you're kind of back at step one, hoping that you've done enough in the time to really kill everybody. Long story short, I think that PvP wise, Kefka is a bit of a wild card, an interesting one to be sure, but his AI might help or hurt him based on one of his key selling features and how that exactly plays out in AI priority without an egregious amount of testing early on to say definitively. As for his power level, I think it's quite there, but I would love to have the unit myself just to be able to change his configuration to really see what his DPS is capable of. So yes, Kefka is interesting to say the least, a fantastic little trolley character for those who are looking for him, but not without his concerns, as one other thing that I proposed in a previous video was the idea of Yuffie in combination with Roy Mustang and this character. And I've kind of come to the realization that my own idea might backfire, mainly because if a character has 0% chance of being hit, the AI will choose to do something else, basically. Like they'll essentially look. So, like, for instance, Kefka hate buffs Yuffie, making Yuffie targetable by opponents. However, she has 0. The opponent can't hit her quite yet, so because of 0% accuracy, and then decides to go after another unit standing right next to her. Well, that might be Kefka in some cases. I can just theorize situations where it would particularly go wrong. So my overall early picks for best team for him would probably be Armont, Kefka, and Roy Mustang in that combination, as a fire magical based defensive team that is sticky, hard to kill, disruptive, and potentially quite damage dealing if the case is properly. As for me, I'll probably be skipping this unit, but keeping a close eye to see how he affects the meta. Mainly, I'm expecting him to not have the biggest impact because regardless of how strong he comes in, Celeste will probably keep him in check with other water units. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. See you next time.